Whoops. Okay. So good morning for those of you here and for those of you watching on Zoom. I am Lori Schneider. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI Sullivan County, and we are the local affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And can everyone hear me okay without the microphone?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So the brain is an organ like any other organ, and as such it is susceptible to illness, just like the heart or the pancreas. There is no difference. When we're talking about mental illness, we are talking about a real physical illness, just like any other. When a child is born, there is no indication that there's anything different or wrong. Unlike with some developmental disabilities, Down syndrome, for instance, you know from the moment that a child is born that there's something different. Not so with mental illness. And when I talk about mental illness, I'm not talking about something that you would go to a therapist to talk over for a life issue. I love this slide. Lassie, get help. Timmy is drowning in the river, and Lassie goes and is gesticulating on a psychiatrist's couch. We're not talking about talk therapy. We're talking about a serious and persistent mental illness. It is nothing that puppy dogs or kisses or kittens is going to cure. 1 in 5 American adults are going to deal with a mental illness at some point in their life, which is why it makes it really important to learn about. It affects millions of people, and many, many people just don't have an understanding about what we're talking about when we talk about mental health issues. Mental illnesses are not curable, like many other illnesses, but they are treatable. And at some point in your life, you or someone you love may very well be affected. I like to talk about separating the myths from the facts, because there are just so many myths and so much misconception and stigma surrounding mental health conditions and mental illness. Words are powerful. We've all used those words, but they're not helpful. To say someone is crazy or psycho, I don't even like saying those words. Because they're painful and they discourage people from getting help and seeking treatment. Another myth, people with mental health issues, mental illness, can just pull themselves out of it if they really put their mind to it. People with mental illness will always have that mental illness. It's not caused by lack of character or strength, and it's not cured by just persevering. So with proper treatments, people can live very full lives, but treatment is important. My favorite myth, people with mental illness are violent. Past behavior will predict future behavior. If you have someone who has a history of violence, whether they have a cardiac condition or schizophrenia or diabetes, if they've been violent in the past, chances are they'll be violent in the future. But having a mental illness does not predispose someone towards being violent. As a matter of fact, most people with mental illness are more often victims of violence than perpetrators of violence. Myth, mental illness can't affect me. Equal opportunity illness. It affects people of all socioeconomic backgrounds, men, women, young people, middle-aged people, older people. Everyone can be affected by mental illness. So we want to learn more about the brain, because the brain is the organ that we're talking about. And at any given time, all of these things, without us putting any thought into it, are being regulated by our brain, which is the most complex computer ever known to man. The only thing that's wrong with this particular picture is that this particular electrician should not be wearing coveralls. That's all I'm going to say. So the brain is electrical and chemical in nature. There are billions of nerve cells or neurons, and they get the information where it needs to go. They're not touching each other. So if you imagine that the neurons are sort of like this, there's that space in between. It's called the synapse. Is that better? Okay. So that space.
Can you see?
I'm fine. That space in between is called a synapse, and it's filled with chemicals. And so you have an electrical impulse that runs down the body of the, that long kind of tail of the neuron, and then gets transferred into a chemical message that crosses that space, hitting the next neuron, and electrical, chemical, electrical, chemical, electrical, chemical. If any part of that system isn't working right, problems can result. I love speaking with people who are my age or a little bit, near to my age. I've done these presentations in junior high schools and high schools. They have no idea what this is. None. And there's a slide later on that they don't have any idea of either. And it's just like, oh my God, I feel old. But many of us remember my mom was a telephone operator, and they used to wear roller skates because the banks of phones were so big. Remember Sarah from the Andy Griffith Show would, listen in sometimes, but would know exactly how to do those little switches and chords, and the phone calls got where they were going. This is the one that the kids today don't know at all. Imagine if these two were telephone operators. Would the messages get where they're supposed to be going? Probably not. There'd be something wrong. Throughout time, theories of cures for mental health issues. This actual is a painting from 1490, and it's called The Cure. This Tin Man looking guy is, if you will look, drilling holes, it was called trephining, into the skull of the person who is not even tied down to that chair. I'm sorry, you need to tie me down big time.
No anesthesia.
No anesthesia, no restraints, and he is basically releasing the bad humors which were felt to be causing the mental illness. This was what was done.
What's with the funnel?
Sorry?
What's with the headpiece?
The Wizard of, I don't know. Maybe that's where they got it for the Tin Man. I'm not really sure. This is from the 19th century, much more modern. The new techniques of restraint, the crib, these were thought to be curative. They were doing this to people in hospitals. And then, of course, you've got the Freudian era. So, Mr. Fenton, let's begin with your mother. And for some reason, it was always mommy who was to blame. There was actually a term in textbooks that there probably are still psychiatrists practicing today who cut their teeth on terms like the schizophrenogenic mother, who was the mom who made her child become schizophrenic. Not true. Absolutely not true. So we talked about words a little bit before. I'm going to mention it again because it bears repeating. Words have power. We've got, a newspaper lady here in the room. Words have power. And these words can be very, very hurtful. There is no room for them within our day and age. I'm going to talk a little bit about, when I talk about mental illness, I'm going to kind of talk for today about thought disorders and mood disorders. There's lots of other things going on, and I can certainly give you more information about that, but we're talking today primarily about the thought disorders and mood disorders. So schizophrenia is a thought disorder. I think I turned the sound off because of that reverb, but there was sound on here. It was whispering and kind of giving you an idea of what you might experience if you were to be hearing voices. So the thought disorder has basically two primary groups of symptoms. One is called positive symptoms and one is called negative symptoms. The positive symptoms aren't great to have. They're just additional things that people that don't have schizophrenia don't experience. So things like hallucinations, which are hearing voices, seeing things that aren't there, smelling, olfactory hallucinations, tactile hallucinations. I knew someone that used to feel that she was being touched, sometimes inappropriately. Paranoia, a very, very increased suspiciousness. Delusions, mistaken beliefs, but very firmly held mistaken beliefs. And disorganized thinking. Negative symptoms are things that detract from normal functioning. So things like flat affect, which is lack of mood. You tell somebody something, wonderful news, and there's no expression, there's no change, or there might be inappropriate You tell them something happy and they start to cry. You tell them something sad and they start to laugh. Anhedonia, which is a lack of joy. Abolition, lack of motivation to do anything. And they have somebody that was a big sports fan and their team is in the World Series and they're not even going to watch it. And a poverty of speech, very, very monosyllabic, pulling teeth to get any kind of response to a conversation. I want to talk about the word psychotic and really define it. Someone who is psychotic is experiencing hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, disorganized thinking, big time. That is somebody who is psychotic. We're not talking about a Hannibal Lecter or a psychopath or someone that has no conscience or makes immoral judgments in plans and carries out a heinous act. Somebody who is psychotic is so disorganized that to be able to get out of bed in the morning, take a shower, brush their teeth, do their hair, get to a job or a volunteer position or a program, that is a big effort. They're not planning and carrying out crimes, somebody who is psychotic. But you'll see, not in the award-winning reporter, but you'll see these horrible headlines sometimes. Psychotic killer slays 5. And it makes you think that the word psychotic is dangerous, you know, that is that psychopath. It is not true. It's very, very big distinction. When someone has schizophrenia, it's really hard for them to filter out incoming stimuli. If you think about just this room, I've got candles flickering over here. You're nodding your head over here. There's light and color from here, light from the outside. There might be people walking in the hallway. Tom is smiling at me. And I'm hearing little, just my own feet moving. And did I turn the oven off before I left the house? Internal thought. All of these things are competing at the same time. But hopefully what I'm saying is of interest. And you can kind of ignore the fact that people are crossing their arm. You know, all the other distracting, oh my God, that candle, you know, doesn't distract you because you're able to filter those things out. The cars going by. But if all of a sudden we heard a screech of tires and a thunk outside the window, we would be able to shift our information or attention to that. People with schizophrenia, instead of holding up like a fine mesh screen, being able to filter out all those competing things, it's like they're holding up a piece of chain link fence and everything is coming in at equal intensity. Our inner thoughts, you're moving your foot, the light from the hallway, there's light and colors there and those flickering flames. You know, so all of that can be competing for your attention. What causes schizophrenia? Well, there are various theories. Enter button would work. Heredity plays a very large part. Complications during pregnancy and birth, believe it or not, play a part as well. And of course, brain chemistry and structure. So heredity. Schizophrenia does run in families, but it's not likely that people inherit the illness itself. They inherit a vulnerability toward that illness. So it gets triggered by something later in life. Complications during pregnancy, there might be infections going on. We're going to talk about a little bit about the heredity in a minute, and you'll see that there's something going on in utero. Dopamine is a brain chemical, a neurotransmitter, and it plays a role in schizophrenia. It also plays a role in Parkinson's disease. In Parkinson's disease, people have too little dopamine in their brain. In schizophrenia, people have too much dopamine in their brain. So people with Parkinson's are actually given a medication called levodopa or L-Dopa, which mimics dopamine, increasing the levels, and their symptoms of Parkinson's get better. When people are on antipsychotic medications for too long, people who've been in state hospitals for decades, they get symptoms, side effects of the medication that look like Parkinson's disease. A little pill rolling motion of the hands, facial twitches, uncontrollable, a mask-like face. People who get too much levodopa, who have Parkinson's disease, get symptoms that look like schizophrenia or side effects. So there's definitely a connection there. There's also a brain structure difference. If you look at the the anatomy of the brain there. You see that those sort of butterfly-looking spaces, it's bigger in the one twin than in the other twin. That is the ventricle, and it's a space in our brain that there's not gray matter. These are unmedicated people, so it's not a result of medication. These are identical twins. The one on the right here is someone with schizophrenia. Their identical twin does not have schizophrenia, and look at the difference in the brain structure. So there's definitely that at play as well. In the general population, 1 in 100 people without having a relative who has schizophrenia will develop schizophrenia. If there's a brother or sister, that goes to 8%. If one parent has schizophrenia, there's a 12% chance that their children will have. A fraternal twin is just a brother or sister. They're not identical genes. But look at, it's almost double what a brother or sister. 8% for a brother or sister, and 14% just for sharing the same room before birth. That's sort of that indication that something's going on in utero. If both parents have schizophrenia, there's a 39% chance that their children will get the illness. However, this is also important. We're not talking about Mendelian blue eyes, brown eyes genetics. If one twin has schizophrenia of identical twins, monozygotic, same genes, only 47% of the time will the other twin also get schizophrenia. There may be something else, bipolar disorder or something else, but if it were just genetic, that should be 100% concordance rate, and it's not. However, look how much bigger it is than just a fraternal twin. So there's lots of things at play. When we talked about the facts and myths, schizophrenia is like the bottom of the totem pole. It's really the least understood. It's the least accepted, if you will. And so the myths that apply to mental illness in general are really strong when it comes to schizophrenia. Poor parenting, again, that's schizophrenogenic mother term. Not true. No amount of nurture is going to prevent somebody from getting schizophrenia. No amount of neglect is going to cause someone to get schizophrenia. It has nothing to do with parenting. That violence myth tends to be more for people with schizophrenia. Split personalities, a lot of people think, 3 faces of Eve, civil, but that's schizophrenia. That is a multiple personality disorder, completely different thing. And so schizophrenia, the word was formed from a split mind, and it was supposed to describe the difference between what those of us that don't have schizophrenia perceive as reality versus what somebody with schizophrenia perceives as reality. Moving on to the mood disorders, we have the biggie, depression. And I call depression, clinical depression, I call that depression with a big D versus depression with a little d. Everyone, if you've come this far in life and have never felt depressed, you haven't been paying attention. There are things that are depressing. There are things that are upsetting, losing a job, losing a loved one, moving, whatever the case may be, relationship breakups. That's depression with a little d. And it's like a grain of sand compared to what a full-blown desert is like for a clinical depression. And depression is a double-edged sword. People will say, what have you got to be depressed about? You've got a great job, you've got a family that loves you, blah, 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 all these things that you shouldn't be depressed about. That's like saying to somebody with emphysema, what do you mean you can't breathe? Look at all this air. It's the same exact thing. When we look at some of the symptoms of depression, we're looking at changes in sleeping patterns and eating patterns. So you may be sleeping all day and all night, or having horrible insomnia and not able to sleep at all. You may be eating everything that's not nailed down and some things that are, or not eating at all, which would lead to weight gain or weight loss. Moving or speaking with unusual speed or slowness, a decrease in sexual drive, a decrease in anything that has been known to give us pleasure, feeling fatigued, lack of energy, worthless, having sinned, diminished ability to concentrate, diminished ability to function, and then feeling out of control and speaking about or thinking about death or suicide. When we talk about depression, that low, Bipolar disorder is like it sounds, two poles, two opposite sides of the spectrum, and as high, or rather as high as the mania is the opposite of depression. It's a very frenzied, elated feeling. As high as that high goes is as low as the low of the depression is going to go, and it's cyclical. Some people take months to cycle between mania and depression, and some people, what's called rapid cyclers, can within the course of a day just go up and down and up and down. It is basically periods of mania, depression with a little bit of normal mood in between. However, it's felt that with each successive break, the level of functioning gets lower and lower. So mania is that frantic high, lots of energy, don't need to sleep, don't need to eat, reckless behavior, kind of up. And depression, we've kind of already talked about the depressive phase of a bipolar disorder looks very much like clinical depression. And the normal moods can occur in between, but again, each successive break kind of leaves somebody at kind of a lower level of functioning. The causes of bipolar disorder, heredity does play a part, as with schizophrenia. Chemical changes in the brain. We were talking about dopamine when we talked about schizophrenia, but we are looking at norepinephrine and serotonin in the mood disorders. Now, I grew up in a Jewish family. If you read a comic book at the table, my aunts got nervous, okay? Don't ask me why. No amount of nervousness or stress is going to cause somebody to go into a psychiatric hospital, but the triggers, so no amount of nervousness or stress is going to cause somebody to become mentally ill, but things can trigger things. So money issues, physical illness, other stressors can cause an episode to surface, but it's not causing the illness. People with bipolar disorder on an absolute emotional roller coaster, and they kind of drag the rest of us along for the ride. The people that care about them watching it is exhausting. I cannot even imagine what living it feels like. During the manic phase, people feel on top of the world, they're very overconfident. They can have symptoms that look psychotic. They can have delusions. And I kind of breezed through delusions before, but I want to just impress upon you if, how many people in this room are married? Raise your hand. If you've been married more than 5 years, keep your hands up. Keep your hand, raise your hand. More than 10 years. More than 20 years. Lori, what's your husband's name?
Stephen,
And you've been married to Stephen for how long?
27 years.
She had to think about that. And do you have children? I know you have at least one.
We have a blended family.
Okay, very cool. And tell me about your blended family.
Stephen has 3 children, Teresa, Matthew, and Anna, and I have Zach.
Okay. Do any of them live with you?
No.
Okay, they're all grown.
They're all
Doing well on their own. Okay. There is a doctor by the name of Xavier Amador. He's a psychologist, and he had a brother who had schizophrenia. And part of the problem with many people who have schizophrenia is that the part of the brain that deals with insight is affected by the illness. And so they don't think they have an illness. I'm going to come back to you, don't worry. How many people in this room have diabetes? Nobody. Good. If I were to convince you all that you need to take insulin for the diabetes that you know you don't have, would you do it? If I was really convincing, how many people would do it? Nobody would do it, because it would hurt you to take insulin for the diabetes that you don't have. When somebody has schizophrenia and has this thought disorder, and the portion of their brain that affects insight is affected by the illness itself, they don't want to take medication. And they have some fancy $20 word called anosognosia. It's a profound lack of insight. So coming back to your story about your blended family, if I were to convince you, or try to convince you, because I've seen Dr. Amador do this in a room full of 300 people, that Stephen's been really very patient, and his family has been really patient with you, because they know there's a problem here. But you keep showing up at his house, insisting that you're his wife, and he's going to have to get an order of protection against you. And you're smiling because it's like funny, and everybody's tittering. But The point is, as much as you, as firmly and strongly as you believe that you've been married for 27 years, that you have this blended family, that you are, have a responsible job, your education. If I were to try to convince you that none of that was true, and I was really persistent about trying to convince you, it'd probably go from to a little maybe defensive and uncomfortable. And there'd be no way that I could convince you that that was not true. When somebody has, psychosis, when they are delusional, you may as well put your head through a brick wall. You can't argue with delusional thinking, whether that's for schizophrenia or in bipolar disorder. I will leave you alone now.
Well, I did want to mention that my grandmother had depressive disorder. She was on lithium,
Mhm.
and my cousin's son actually has that as well, and that's much more not going to be convinced to take medication.
Yeah,
and it's
Yeah.
much
Well, also
more
with
involved.
bipolar disorder, and bipolar disorder used to be called manic depression, same illness that we're talking about. If you were depressed and I said, here, take this pill, it's going to make you feel better. Chances are you want to feel better, and okay, I'll take the pill. If you're on top of the world and you're feeling great, and I say, here, take this pill, it's going to bring you down. Come down. I want to feel great. You take the pill. Nothing wrong with me. So medication compliance can be a huge issue. And there's a raft of side effects that go along with, any medication has side effects. So sometimes the side effects are very uncomfortable, and people, especially if they don't perceive that they have an illness to begin with, why would they take that medication when it makes them feel like crap? So yeah, there's that issue. So with mania, you've got that just incredible flush of energy, hyperactivity, sleeping less, irritation, racing thoughts, in your face talking to somebody. I know somebody that took over services at a synagogue and kind of like pushed the rabbi out of the way, and he was, going to do the service because he could do a better job. Or there was a movie years ago with Richard Gere. It wasn't very well received because it was about mental illness, and it was called Mr. Jones. And there's a scene where he goes to a symphony, and he doesn't like the way the conductor is conducting that particular symphony, and he just goes up on stage and he starts conducting the symphony, gets arrested, gets taken to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. Lack of judgment can be one of the symptoms of mania. And people can really spend an entire life savings, invite dangerous people into their homes, get into a business deal with somebody they've only just met, and other harmful behaviors, and very easily distractible. During the depressive phase, again, we're all talking about all the things that we talked about with depression itself. And as I said before, the length of each phase may vary from days to month, or you may be seeing somebody who's cycling within the same day. One thing that's important to notice is that there are other illnesses and other conditions that can mimic some of the symptoms of mental health, a brain tumor, God forbid, pressing answer. So it's always important, especially very early on, if anybody is seeing unusual behavior, to have a thorough physical evaluation before the mental illness is diagnosed. I was on my way over here before I started talking about stigma. I was listening to the radio and I heard an ad for an attorney, and they were talking about, if you have a heart condition, would you go to a foot doctor? And they were talking about how they only do personal injury law. Well, the same is true. I cannot tell you that many people are having psychiatric medications prescribed by a general practitioner. And the GPs, they're doing it. If their patient had a heart condition, they'd insist that they go see a cardiologist. If you have a foot problem, go see a podiatrist. If you have a mental illness, see a psychiatrist, because they are going to be more familiar with medications than your primary care physician. And if the primary care physician isn't recommending that, I would ask why. A psychopharmacologist, by the way, is a psychiatrist who specializes in medicine, so that's even better. Well, let's talk about stigma. When we talk about other illnesses, most other illnesses, the person who's dealing with them, and with all chronic illnesses, it's not just the person with the diagnosis, it's the entire family is dealing with that illness, much the case with mental illness. But when you have emphysema, You're dealing with the symptoms. You're not dealing with society's perceptions of, what do you mean you can't breathe? Look at all this air. Nobody's ever said that to somebody. And yet, well-meaning people will always say stupid things, non-productive things to people with a mental illness. So stigma is a mark of disgrace that dishonors somebody. And it comes in innocent places, but I don't think this is so innocent. And if you can't see this, it's inside the ear of crazy people. This is a Gary Larson Far Side cartoon that was in nationwide periodicals. And it's voice number 1, voice number 2, voice number 3 saying things into this person's ear. Dump spaghetti on that guy's head, shave your neighbor's dog, go to the zoo and enlist. Do you think, I don't remember what year this was published, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't in the dark age. It was not too long ago. Do you think you would see a cartoon in the newspaper that had the outside of a cancer treatment facility with a patient vomiting on the street that had 3 hairs in their heads? Would we see that? No. Why? Because it's not appropriate. Neither is this. It's not innocuous. Whoops. I can go back. Yes, I can. Stigma has rippling effects, negative attitudes, stereotypes, misunderstandings. They create tremendous barriers. They keep people from seeking out treatment because they don't want to be those people. They don't want people looking at them that way. They don't want people. There was a study done a number of years ago, and people with mental illness were the least appreciated group in terms of you're going to open a halfway house or something in your neighborhood. And there were people who would rather have convicted felons living next door to them than somebody with a mental illness because of stigma. And again, words have power. We need to stop the stigma of mental illness. Language matters. So we don't want to say a schizophrenic government. We don't want to say, oh, you're OCD, come clean my house. I'll keep you busy for a while. Oh, you look anorexic. My mom yelled at me yesterday. She's so bipolar. Quit being psycho. These are not appropriate statements. I talked briefly about suicide. If you've not been affected by suicide, of losing somebody that you love, consider yourself very lucky. I lost my first cousin to suicide 29 years ago. I had spoken with him 2 days before he died by hanging and had 0 indication. I've been in my job for 37 years, so I was already working here for quite a while. Mental health advocate, could not help my own family. Had no idea. And only after the fact did my aunt, who was an LPN, say, well, I knew he was depressed, but I didn't know he was that depressed. I didn't even know he was depressed. Turns out, actually, he had bipolar disorder. No one talked about it. That is the shame. Not talking about it is the shame. Not having an illness, that's not a shame. Not dealing with it, not talking about it, that is the crime. Every 40 seconds, someone in the world dies by suicide. Every 41 seconds, someone is left to make sense of it. And it does not make sense. Permanent solution to a temporary problem, whatever that problem may be. I have some bracelets here. I cannot tell you how many times I've taken mine off of my wrist and given it to somebody who needed it. 988 is the nationwide hotline for suicide. You can call or text. The young people today don't want to talk to people. They just want to text. And get somebody 24/7 in your area. The one little glitch is that, let's say you've got a college student and they've got a phone, they're up here at SUNY Sullivan, but they're from Long Island. So their area code is going to send them to somebody in Long Island, but they can put them in touch with the right people locally to get them help. So please take a 988 bracelet. For those of you that are on Zoom, I can leave some with you guys and you can get them. But take note that this is a lifeline. It does not have to be for somebody who's suicidal. It can be for somebody who's just in a crisis or needs to talk to somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning. There is somebody to talk to. There is somebody to text to. Just like 911 is for a medical emergency, 988 is for a psychiatric emergency. NAMI Sullivan has for a few years been teaming up with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP. Having lost my cousin to suicide, I used to walk in their walks, and then COVID came and nobody was doing the walks anymore. And then not too long after things calmed down a little bit, I was seeing emails for Dutchess County walks, Orange County walks, Ulster County, nothing for Sullivan. So I contacted the person who was coordinating these walks and said, how come there's not a Sullivan County walk anymore? And she said, well, a couple of reasons. One is the person who'd been coordinating it moved out of the area. We don't have any volunteers. And two was the last time we did the walk, there was only, 40 people that showed up. So you're saying you're not alone, and then there's 40 people that care enough to come out. So it was kind of a mixed message. Of course, I said, well, how many volunteers do you need and exactly what do they need to do? You know what happens when you ask a question, you get a responsibility. So for the past, this will be the third year that I'm the chairperson for the Out of the Darkness Community Walk. The first year that we did it, after having had only 40 the last time it had been done, it was a torrential downpour that day. Torrential downpour. We had 77 walkers. It was like you were in a shower. Over 100 had registered, but 77 people came out in the absolute pouring rain, and that was like, it made my heart feel so big. Last year we had just about 100. My goal for this year is I want 200 people there. So if you guys would like to take part, spread the news. I did not bring any of the flyers with me, but I can certainly email that to you, Tom, and you can share it. It's going to be on a Saturday this year, October 4th, the first Saturday of October, which also happens to fall during Mental Illness Awareness Week, so that's very cool. We leave from the Bethel Senior Center. It's about a 2-mile walk. It is not arduous. I am the slowest walker on the face of the planet. I could start anywhere. I end up dead last. It's not hilly. It's not a hike. It's just a walk through the neighborhoods of Bethel. It's really, really pretty. And it's raising money for AFSP, but it's also raising awareness. And I think it's just a really powerful, impactful day. So when mental illness strikes, like I said, with any chronic illness, it affects not just the person with the diagnosis, but the whole family. So it can affect you at any time. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We in Sullivan County have been on the scene since 1983. I've been there since 1988. And at one time we were called Friends and Advocates for Mental Health. And I know there are people in this room that remember that name. But we were always an affiliate of what at the time was called AMI, the Alliance for the Mentally Ill. That changed to the Alliance on Mental Illness and then, of course, the National. So we offer family support, advocacy, education, no clinical services, but we do refer to clinical services. We have support groups. Our Sharing and Caring Family Support Group is for family members that have a loved one, an adult, 18 or over, who has a mental illness. Our Suicide Bereavement Group is for people who have lost a loved one to suicide. And our NAMI Connection Group is a peer support group for people who themselves, 18 and over, have a diagnosis. All of our meetings are free, confidential, and a safe place to share, and we do them as a hybrid of live and in person, and also via Zoom for people that can't get there in person. Our Compare program is, Compare is a nationwide program that we've been doing since 1983. We recruit caring men and women from the community to form a one-to-one friendship with somebody recovering from mental illness. There's training. There's fun activities that you can do during the month that we do as a group that are always free. And the most important thing is that one-to-one friendship and sharing in each other's lives. I've got some brochures here for anybody that's interested. Every Brilliant Thing is a, has anybody here seen that? You did, cool. Where'd you see it? Did you see me do it? Or you just seen it? Okay. Every Brilliant Thing is a play written by a British playwright called Duncan Macmillan. And I found out about it quite by accident. In 2017, I went to a meeting I never go to. We each had 2 minutes, all these providers in the room, to talk about their agency. I think by now, you know I can't even say hello in 2 minutes, but I managed to do what I had to do. And then at the end of the meeting, there was a woman talking about this play, this show that she had seen in the Finger Lakes area called Every Brilliant Thing. And it was a one-man show. The story of when he was a young boy, his mother had her first suicide attempt. And in order to wrap a 7-year-old brain around that, he came up with a list of everything brilliant in the world, all reasons to want to live. And at 7, those were things like ice cream and staying in Flint past your bedtime. And she said it was amazing. It was funny and it was heartwarming and it was audience interaction. And I said, that's amazing. Do you think we could get him to come here and do it? And she said, no, that's not his story. It's a play with a script. I said, really? And it doesn't have to be a guy. It could be a girl. I said, really? For those of you that know me know that I wear a couple of hats. I've done community theater for decades. I've directed, I've acted, and I go back to the office. I Google every brilliant thing. I get 15 pages worth of the script on PDF, and I inhale it. I order the script from Dramatist Play Service, devour it, and now I'm like, this was laid in my lap with a big old ribbon on it. I talked to my board of directors. I said, we were meant to do this show as an awareness raiser and fundraiser for NAMI Sullivan. Let's see it first. I'm not memorizing 70 minutes worth of material for maybe we're going to do this. So I did it as a reading. And because there was a small board of directors, there's actually 67 different pieces of the list that get given out as people come in. So everybody had a few of the pieces. And we did this. And so it was agreed because it was like, royalty and everything is not meant to be done in a theater with lighting. It could be done in a room like this. And they said, well, we can try it 3 times. If it's well attended, if it's well received, we'll think about doing it more. Before we had done it 3 times, we had 2 more lined up. Orange County wanted us to do it, and NAMI New York State wanted it at the statewide educational conference. So I did it there. Since 2018, I've done it for other NAMI affiliates, not-for-profit organizations, church groups, service groups, nursing students, anywhere they want us to come. It is so powerful. And I know that this is a small group. I don't know if you have interaction with other groups, but if you'd like a presentation, it is amazing, and I'd be happy to talk more about it. So in addition to 988 in our county, we have the mobile mental health team. So if you have an issue of concern, if you see somebody that's wandering in the streets, gesticulating, and maybe in traffic, or it looks like they might be endangering themselves, you can call the mobile mental health team and they will go and do an evaluation. If it's for a child or youth, the children's mobile mental health team, all of that information is on our brochure, so I have those numbers for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? And like I say, please take some literature and 988 bracelets. And I can leave some literature here too for those of you that are on Zoom, if anybody would like it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
This is Sharon. I have a question.
Sure. Hi, Sharon.
Hi. I can't see you. I don't know if you can see me. Several things. I love the idea about every brilliant thing. I'm going to see if I can read it and try to see if I lived in Easton, and I have several acting friends. I was in theater. It sounds like a wonderful community service if we could put something together here.
You can see it. The original performer who actually helped to craft the script was Johnny Donahoe, and he did it as an HBO special. I've not actually seen it because I don't like to watch somebody else do what they're doing. But if you wanted to see the show, you can see it's on HBO, and it's you can see it, but it's amazing.
Thank you very much. The one other thing I've lived through several suicides of close people and people close enough. It's devastating for the people who are left behind. The one thing I can say about it is once you've seen the symptoms and you didn't recognize them the first time, you seem to recognize them very, very easily the second and third time. You just know what that looks like because the first time it's the same thing. You didn't know that you knew they were depressed, but not that kind of depressed. So it's a serious bit of business, and it's worth people looking into what they should be looking out for if they have a relative or, it's so frightening.
With that said, though, Sharon, sometimes there are no warning signs.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there really are no warning signs. Yeah. Has anybody here, did you used to watch the show House MD? Remember that show? With Hugh Laurie played a diagnostician.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a wonderful show. And in real life, Hugh Laurie, prior to doing that show, he was part of a comedy team, Brian Laurie, and his partner has schizophrenia. And so he was really very intent on every time there was a mental health related issue, that was talked about on that show. It was talked about very realistically and compassionately, and they always gave information about NAMI. Well, there was a character, Dr. Kuttner, on that show, and the actor left the show. He actually went to, I believe he worked, in Obama's staff. So when Obama was first elected, this character was written out of the show because the actor was leaving. Now, they could have written him out of the show in any number of ways. And Kuttner was a very upbeat kind of guy, very mellow, just somebody that you would never, ever think. They wrote him out of the show by having him die by suicide. And it was completely unfair. I mean, the fans, the other doctors on the team, they were all blaming themselves. Why didn't I see this? I saw no sign. Sometimes there is no sign. Often there are other attempts, and there are signs, there are warnings, people will talk about it. Hey, it's funny when people are, I don't know if anybody has seen a meme like this, suicidal versus suicide. If somebody is talking about, they're looking for attention, or people will dismiss it. And when somebody dies by suicide, why didn't we see this before? So always, always, if anybody says anything, take it seriously. Even if you think they're just looking for attention, get them to an emergency room. Get them where they can.
I just have one more thing. Just on NPR, they were mentioning Parkinson's. We now have a family member with Parkinson's, and I don't know if that's going to be a problem for any of our, children or grandchildren. But the one thing that they said is that they now believe that some Parkinson's is caused because of all the chemicals in our food and all the chemicals in our grass because of people spraying their lawns, people who are going into golf courses, and they spray them within an inch of their life. And they're saying that a lot of it is chemical related. I'm just wondering, once you have it in your system and you get it from that, if that's the case, and you then have offspring, how will the statistics be able to, calculate which ones are from some other reason or which ones are from chemistry, whatever the chemicals
a very interesting study, a very interesting look at it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's another whole other thing. One more thing to think about.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I can't see you. I didn't see the thing, but I listened, and I really love the subject because I was supposed to go into psychology or psychiatry, but I just knew I wasn't going to be made for it, so I went on to something else. But thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question.
Can everybody else see me all right? Yes.
Okay. My best friend, who is now deceased, her daughter-in-law, who is not, suffered from bipolar, and she claimed she didn't take her medicine because it dampened her sexual response and because it put weight on her, and it did. She definitely put on weight when she was taking it. So she would be off more than she was on, and it was very evident in her behavior.
I know a lot of people who have said similar things, and not just about bipolar medication, but medication for schizophrenia. I have a friend who said, I'd rather be a little crazy and not be sedated and not be gaining weight and not be, she was very creative, wrote music, and felt that it dampened her creativity. So, taking a medication, it's a risk-benefit ratio, and the person themselves has to determine that for themselves. Is the benefit that I'm getting from this worth the risk? I mean, aspirin has side effects. Everything has side effects. And it's very difficult when you're on the outside looking in and you want to take and shake somebody and say, take your medication. And I'll say, okay, I can wait without the benefit of having any of those medications. That's just me. But I can understand how a difficult side effect is going to make it more challenging for somebody to want to take their medication. You kind of got to meet them where they are, and with people with bipolar disorder, I talked about when they're in that manic state. But you got to remind them, well, remember when the bottom fell out, and that was like a horrible feeling for so long. So it can be a partnership when you're trying to deal with somebody. And one of the hardest questions that we get at NAMI as a family support and advocacy organization is, how do you help somebody that does not want help? And the answer is sometimes you can't. Which is why the two sides of the coin with NAMI, we can certainly be there and be supportive to get your family member the help they need, but besides that, there's the support for the family that's dealing with it, and that's where our support groups come in so beautifully. By the way, the support groups are done via Zoom and live, so even if you don't live in the area or can't get to Monticello or don't want to drive or the weather's iffy, you can always join by Zoom.
Error hasn't been done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tamara.
Hey, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I'm making a whole lot of connections while I'm listening to you. I studied neurology in Atlanta at Emory University, and I studied Parkinson's there as well. And then had several. I have known personally several, a few people who had schizophrenia, but also knew there's some psychopaths in my family as well, so that's interesting. But
Different story.
but yeah, but my ex-husband, his family, there were some schizophrenic. His brother had schizophrenic. I think his uncle. There may have been bipolar as well, and a few of his, and he started exhibiting some schizophrenic symptoms, and that really concerned me. But having a background in psychology, I was like, all right, I'm not going to be his psychologist, I'm not going to be his therapist, but I did try to connect him with some help. But drew the line when he did start becoming violent, which was really heartbreaking. I had to draw the line there. But I've had several friends commit suicide, and no warning, absolute none. And like, shocking to me, some of them, and talked to some like within 2 days of that happening. And so it's really heart-wrenching. And yeah, so this is wonderful. I did not know about that crisis number, so that I'm definitely going to make a note of that. And I didn't know that there was even a support group, because that's really hard. I've lost a lot of friends in a matter of a few years, and several of them, well, a few of them, not several, but several friends, but a couple of them were by suicide. And the grieving process is pretty intense.
Losing
Comes to
someone
that.
to anything, especially if it's sudden, grief is grief. However, grief for someone lost to suicide is sort of, I call it a disenfranchised loss, because other people don't understand. It's not the same as somebody lost to cancer. It's not the same as a motor vehicle accident where it was sudden. And there's stigma, there's religious,
like consequences or something
you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you died by suicide, or I don't know about other religions, but yeah, not supposed to be. It depends on how much they know.
I see that a lot of people, because it just really broke my heart, because I knew they must have been, they're not in their right mind. They're hurting beyond hurt. Like, if they think that's the only way out, that's like
the only option. How much pain did they
that is so messed up. But my other friends, when I tried, I can't talk to them because they're just angry at them for doing that.
Yeah.
And
when we first started our support group, we had somebody who was coming to our sharing and caring group who lost daughter, sister to suicide, and we were trying to put them in touch with. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel if there was something else in the county, but there wasn't. There was we found something online that said it was a suicide bereavement group, but when I called, it was really for bereaved parents who had lost a child to anything. Different. It's different. And if you're sitting in a group for a bereavement group, the people who've lost somebody to cancer aren't going to know what to even say to somebody who's lost somebody to suicide. It's a very different loss.
Yeah, so I
And
appreciate that.
so that group is
Yeah.
really amazing, and we would welcome you to come to it either live or via Zoom.
And
Again,
that's wonderful that it's Zoom as well, that you're doing a hybrid. I didn't know about that either. So it's
and the bereavement groups
so
are held the
important.
first Wednesday of each month at 6:30. And if you
Thank you.
get me some information, I can put you on my call list and remind you. And we have an email that goes out to give the link for the Zoom. And
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very
Pat
welcome.
Sanders has had her
Oh.
hand up.
Yep. Hi, Pat.
You-
I'm muted.
Yeah.
I had two things. One is a number of us are in Pennsylvania, and if we wanted to connect with I guess there's a Scranton group of NAMI. Do they do similar things to Sullivan County, or you just have to talk?
NAMI, there's a saying within NAMI, if you've seen one NAMI affiliate, you've seen one NAMI affiliate. Many
Right.
do. There are some signature programs. Our family support group is one of them. So they probably have a family support group. They probably or may have a connection group, which is the peer support group. Our bereavement support group is not, or suicide bereavement support group is not a NAMI signature program. So I think it'd be hard pressed to find another NAMI affiliate that does that. I'm not saying you would never, but
Right.
the best thing to do would be to call and
help.
or go online. They should have a website, by the way, if anybody wants to go on our website. It's namisullivan.org. I have a QR code you can.
Okay. Another thing is we have we have two organizations, Tustin Social over in Narrowsburg and the Cooperage Project in Honesdale, that are doing senior programs. They alternate Thursdays, and they're usually about 2 hours. And I'm just wondering about that. Every Brilliant Thing, as whether that might be really a great presentation
It's
if
an
it got.
amazingly strong presentation. I do know that there's a theater group in Narrowsburg that did it not a few years back. And it was funny because people were calling me and saying, you know, they're doing Evergreen, like it's my show. But my show. Okay, you know, maybe DVA didn't know that NAMI was doing it. I'm sure had they known, they'd have reached out to us to come do it. But I'd be happy to go anywhere. We've gone to the Berkshires and done it there. That was very cool. We've gone to Jersey, everywhere in New York State, Olean, Cuba, Cuba, New York, not Cuba, Cuba. But honestly, anywhere people want us to come, we will be happy to go. And I have an information sheet about, you know, what will be entailed. So I'd be happy to send it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
You are very welcome. And if anybody wants literature, please take a bracelet. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll just close with the song. I hear you calling my name. I hear you holding me. I feel you holding me, welcoming me in a circle of love. We send this out as a wish. I hear you calling my name. I feel you holding me. Let's do it again. I hear you calling my name. I feel you holding me. Calling my name. Holding me. Welcoming me in a circle of love. Just one more time. I hear you calling my name. I hear you calling my name. I feel you holding me. I hear you calling my name. I feel you holding me. Calling my name. Holding me. Welcoming me in a circle of love. Welcoming me in a circle of love. So we'll extinguish this chalice. But we hold in our hearts what we heard today about the struggles for mental health and how we can be of service and aware.